Hi, and welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast, co-hosted by Abby Fearing, the Badass Breastfeeder, and Dianne Cassidy, IBCLC.
Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Would you love a postnatal vitamin that can also support your healthy milk supply? Milky's Complete Postnatal Vitamin is a 2-in-1 supplement with vitamin D and vitamin B made especially for lactating women. With added fenugreek and fennel, this vitamin not only gives you what you need in your postpartum recovery, but also supports your milk supply. Head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for the link and use promo code BADASS for 10% off of everything at Fairhaven Health.
Hey, and welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. I'm Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder.
We are going to talk about, what are we talking about today, Abby?
We're talking about losing your shit.
Losing your shit. Like, nobody knows what that's about, right?
I know, and I like it because we're allowed to talk about it as long as we put an explicit lyrics or explicit whatever thing next to the title. Then we can say shit as much as we want. So I'm just going to say shit for half an hour.
I always wanted to be like, have that explicit rapper.
I know. Now we get to have it. We get like street cred for that.
I know. We are really bad.
So this is one of my favorite topics, and I think it's because a long time ago when I started my blog, it was like it was called the Badass Breastfeeder, and I'm like, I'm going to write a blog about breastfeeding. I didn't write about breastfeeding for like 2 years. I was just writing about attachment parenting and all this stuff, and after a little while, people were like, how are you so calm all the time? Like, how are you so gentle all the time? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like, and it dawned on me that people were getting the impression that I was like just this, super calm, patient person all the time because this is what I was constantly posting about. And I was like, whoa. I post about that because this is my biggest struggle. This is my big struggle. This is how it's coming out. Like that's I'm actually the opposite. And so I wrote this blog post called The Secret of Losing My Shit. And people lost their shit. They were like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one. Oh my God. And people were like, it was like kind of a turning point in the blog because it was like, oh, now this is like whole big thing that people never wanted to talk about and were afraid to talk about. And now we're talking about it. And I mean, I talked a lot about like, trying to get Jack is super sensitive and he didn't really sleep, trouble getting him to sleep. And I would just, talking about all of these big emotions, big scary emotions that I was having as a new mom.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So then it just became like my favorite thing to talk about. And whenever I started to notice themes and whenever I would talk about it, there would be all these people who would say, oh my God, I'm so happy we're finally talking about this. I thought I was the only one. Everyone's always putting on this fantastic front because that's what we feel like we have to do. And then on the other hand, some people, it really scared some people. And they were like, oh my God, some people were like, you shouldn't be talking about this. You're scaring new moms and you shouldn't be saying all this stuff. And then there were some people who were like, you're nuts. Like you need help.
Oh my
like
God, really?
Like you need to go to therapy. And I'm, as a therapist, I'm like, yeah, sure. Everybody should go to therapy.
Right.
But like, okay, whatever. I'm talking about the whole thing, like in the first 2 minutes, but.
It's, it kind of reminds me of how everybody looks at somebody's post on Facebook or on whatever social media you happen to follow, and they're like, oh my gosh, what a perfect life. Oh my gosh, this mother feeds her child, the perfect food groups. Or, oh my gosh, look at how peacefully that child's sleeping. And, oh, look at them being able to get out of the house every day, making a family trip to the zoo on a random day, and it's like, you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. It's chaos behind the scenes. But,
yeah, the people we like to show like what's perfect in our lives because it helps us feel
right.
Like we've got it together.
Right, and that's what everybody wants to see, right? We want everybody to think that we are so together that there is never an issue.
Right. And then what ends up happening is that, I mean, and there's even studies about this, about how social media makes people like depressed because all they're seeing is like all of these perfect things, because this is what people, it's kind of like marketing. It's like you're marketing your life.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's
so
a
then
great way to think about it. Oh my God, what a great analogy. That's so perfect.
Right. So, and then people are like, oh God, like I'm the one who's over here with the mess of everybody fighting and, you know, and I'm, you know, losing my shit every 2 minutes at my kids. And, you know, then we think that we've got all these June Cleavers walking around.
Right. And it's not like that.
And it's
We're
not
the
like
first
that
ones
at
to tell you
all.
that.
Yes, it's not like that. And we can't have it. This is my big thing, is we cannot have it both ways. We cannot tell parents that parenting is going to be the hardest thing you ever do, that it's going to push buttons like you've never been pushed before, that, you know, that you're going to experience all of these things that you've never experienced before. And we cannot at the same time tell people, well, you know, something's wrong with you if you're losing your shit. Well, so you need, you know, that's not normal. You shouldn't be acting like that. You shouldn't be doing that. You can't have it both ways.
No,
you can't tell somebody that this is going to be the hardest thing they ever do. And by the way, if you have a reaction to it, something's wrong with you. That's ridiculous.
And we say this about breastfeeding too. People say, oh, you know, and people are finally coming out and saying, everybody says I should be breastfeeding. Everybody says breastfeeding is the best thing for me and my baby. Yet nobody's offering me any support with breastfeeding. And it's kind of like, we cannot tell people what a magical world this parenthood is. Go have a baby and then just kind of drop everybody in the middle of the forest without any kind of support or help or directions on how to get out of there. Like, this is hard, and we should not sugarcoat it and make it seem like everything is so perfect all the time. Yes, you are going to absolutely have perfect days. You're absolutely going to have perfect days.
I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting.
You know, you're going to have those moments where you're like, oh, you know, like this was such a nice day together. This was such a great, everybody behaved today. Everybody slept good. Everybody did this, whatever, you know, but every stage has its challenge. Every single stage has its challenge. And it's just the way it is.
Right. And I think we live in this culture too, where when you have everybody's really scared of these big feelings.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know, if you're feeling like a lot of anger, you're feeling a lot of, you know, sadness or frustration or you're overwhelmed, it's like, it's immediately just, oh, this is not normal, this is not acceptable, and like, what's the prescription for it?
Yeah.
You know, and by all means, I mean, if you feel like you know, if you're in a place where you feel like this is, you know, is interfering with your life, and, you know, maybe you're in a place where you feel like you need medication, then do it. Like that's fine. And you can go to our other episode where like most of these medications are safe to continue breastfeeding and all of that. That's great. That's fine. But you don't, but to automatically say that somebody's having a rough time transitioning into parenthood and therefore you need a prescription, or you need, you know, that there's something inherently wrong with you, is asinine.
You know, this makes me think, I think it was actually now a couple of years ago, one of my wonderful therapist friends who I do some groups and stuff with, but she held this group in our office a couple of years ago for little kids, and it was like called Little Kids with Big Emotions. And it was all about how we could help little kids who are feeling so many things to understand what it is that they're feeling. Because when they are 5, 6, 4, you know, like those ages, and they don't understand all these big feelings that are happening, like this was a class to help them to understand it. It's like, we need that. Why is it that when we're adults, we're supposed to automatically understand how all this stuff is happening and what is happening? We feel new things all the time. We have new experiences, new emotions, new things. I mean, having a baby, you cannot like put into words what that's going to feel like for you. I don't care how many classes you go to before you have this baby. Nobody's going to be able to tell you. No, it's too abstract.
You can't. No, you can't. And that's what I remember saying that to my pediatrician when I had Exley, and Jack, my first, was like losing his mind. And I was talking to my pediatrician about it, and I was like, well, we did all this, like, you know, we read books about, you know, having a new baby. We did all this. We tried to really prepare. And he was like, he's like, it's too abstract. You can't really prepare them for that. Like, it's just, there's not it's not possible. It's just trying to explain things to people they've just never experienced before, and you just can't do it.
No, it's a lot. So we're talking today about losing your shit and how it's okay to lose your shit, right? Like,
well, yeah, and right, it's like it's okay, and some people, you know, and so here's the thing is like you're in this new very stressful situation, and you know what's happening when you are dealing with a baby who won't stop crying, or you know, and this all goes through all of the developmental stages, because I'm convinced now that it's not going to end. And not to, you know, turn everybody off, but I mean, I lose my shit all the time, and they're 7 and 4, and it's been happening since they were born, basically. But so this is what, you know, what's happening is that you're pushed and you're stressed, and when you're pushed that much, you go into fight or flight.
Yeah.
And this is a reaction that your brain has that goes back to, you know, our ancient ancestors when we were in emergency situations. And the idea is that your brain, basically all of your logical, you know, the logical part of your brain just shuts off, and you go into this part where you're just reacting.
It's survival mode, right?
Like survival mode, yeah. Exactly. And this is like back in the day, ancient times, this was happening, you know, to like, you know, you'd run into a tiger or something outside, and you had to decide how you were going to survive. And we still have this, except it gets triggered in all these ways now, and your brain, it doesn't know that it's not a tiger, that it's a little baby that can't hurt you, but you've been stressed to that point. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to react. And the way that you're going to react has a lot to do with how you were brought up, like what your childhood was like. Mm-hmm. And I do this, and as a social worker, I was an instructor for the physical restraint training that we did. I worked with adolescents that had behavior and emotional issues, and we did they were aggressive. And so we did hands-on restraints with them when they're, you know, going to harm themselves or somebody else. So I would work with the staff on trying to prepare them for what they would do in a situation where they were, you know, maybe a client was coming at them with a chair or something. And, you know, I'd say, so what is it that would happen if you were pushed absolutely beyond your limits? What are you going to do? And, you know, the answers ranged from, you know, I would hit back, or I would yell, or I would cry and run away, or, you know. Mm-hmm. And again, I think this just goes back to however you were raised in these situations. You know, if you were hit as a child, then your reflex might be to hit. Mm-hmm. If you were yelled at, my thing is yelling. My thing is yelling. It's just yelling. Like, I just really, really struggle with yelling. And I hear about parents who like, they cry. I just cry. And I'm like, I wish I could just cry. Like, why? I wish I could have that reaction. My reaction is yelling. No, I wish I could just, you know, people are like, I just am crying. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know. I'm a yeller. And, so this is so when you're pushed to these limits, then these are your reactions. And so if you were hit as a child, and I'm sure nobody wants to hit their child. But if you're pushed to these limits and you feel like you're going to hit your child, you feel like you're going to start screaming, then we're like, oh my God, something is wrong with me. Like, I shouldn't be doing this, you know. And really, there's really not. That's a really normal reaction to have when you're pushed, when your buttons are pushed like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a really, really normal reaction.
Yeah.
And this is not advocating for you to hit your child. This is advocating for you to feel like, okay, this is me wanting to hit my child right now is normal considering the situation that I'm in right now.
Right.
You know, or to yell, or to whatever you do when you're stressed. Like, having a reaction to stress, it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. That's what humans do.
It's very, I don't know why we think that when something is going to trigger us, we're not going to have that reaction. Like we're almost surprised by our reactions, or people around us are surprised.
Yeah. And there's so much shame, because there's so much shame and so much, about these big feelings in our culture, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, I had a big feeling. Oh my God. And then you just have all this shame and guilt.
And people don't realize, like, everybody reacts differently. I think you made a great point when you said, it depends on your background and, all these different things. Everybody has a different reaction. And to look at somebody and be like, oh, they shouldn't be talking to their child that way, or they shouldn't be talking, they shouldn't be doing this, or why are they not? If that were my child, I would be sending him to his room instead of being able to sit there and quietly, it should not be up to us, like I get amazed at times. Like I had a mom in my office one day. We're working with her newborn. She had her 3-year-old with her, and she's trying to nurse the baby, and every 2 seconds her 3-year-old's, Mom, I'm hungry. I want to eat. Mom. Like, and she was like, oh my goodness, you're hungry again? You just ate that big sandwich when we were at the store. Okay, we'll have to go get you a snack. And I'm like, oh my God, you are the mother of the freaking year. Like this, I don't think I would have had the patience if I were a brand new mom and I'm trying to work with breastfeeding and my other child is hanging on me, telling me that they want to eat. Like, and she had, to me, the patience of a saint. Like,
and she was, amazing. But don't be fooled, because she was also in public. Exactly. And here's the other thing, is that we do this too. We look at other people and we're like, oh my God, look at her. She's being so amazing. And I'm such an asshole. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word, but I feel like if we're saying lose your shit this much, then I can throw that one in there too.
I think that thing I've kind of come to terms with, that I know that there are certain aspects of life I do not have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And like we all have our own limits. Yeah. Right. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's certain, and I've learned a lot, like another one of my fantastic therapist friends who always says, we do not have to like every stage. You don't have to like every stage that you're in. Like it's okay. It's okay to say, I don't like the newborn stage, or I don't like the baby stage, or I don't like the teenagers. It's really, it's okay to not like every stage.
Yeah.
And you have to, just kind of accept that and know that you are going to have less patience probably during that time. I tend to kind of like hold it in, which is not good either, and then explode at certain times when it's like probably the smallest thing that, like, that's the end of my rope, like that is it. And it's funny because now that my kids are older, and I tried to really hold it together a lot because I was a single mom, and the time together was, it was just different, and you're not you're not parenting in the same home. So you really have to do things a little differently. And I really tried to hold it together a lot for them, and just like exploded in different ways. I'm sure to, people who didn't necessarily deserve it, but whatever. Wow. Yeah. But now that they're older, like I can talk to them differently and have conversations with them. But there are still times where I will completely lose it. If it's stuff that I tell them over and over and over again, and it's still happening, and I had a bad day and I'm pissed off at something else, and I'll just like lose it. And later on, like maybe a day or two later, my daughter will be like, you are freaking scary when you're like that. And I'm like, because you never see me like that. That's why and I don't know that that's a good thing necessarily, that I try to make it so blissful all the time for them. And I try to be like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to like suck it up and choose my battle. Maybe I should like not choose my battle so much so they can see what it's
yell
really,
all the time. Normalize it.
Like maybe I'll feel better, like maybe then they're just like be used to it. And I'm like, see what happens when you push me to my limits. I tell them that all that, like, see what happens. This is what's going to happen. When I say that too. When you push me to my limit, this is what we're going to get. You're going to get me that loses my shit, and it's not pretty. But like we all are there. And social media, I'm not putting that on social media. I'm not putting the picture
exactly.
of, but it's so, and I find it so hard when I meet, like people that I know in a social setting, not necessarily like clients, but more of a social setting, where they're like, oh, my children are perfect, or oh, my children are doing this, or oh, my children have got these fantastic grades and they're going here and they're going there. And I'm sitting there going, God, my kids suck. Like, what is, like what the, but you have to remember that this is a false sense of security for a lot of people.
Yeah,
it really is. It really is. So what do you do once you lose your shit? You just kind of
see, that's the thing. That's the thing, right? That's the thing, right? About what we do when we after we lose our shit. And I think I think I talked about this a couple episodes ago, or maybe even the last one. But like a couple years ago, I decided to go to counseling because I was yelling a lot, losing my shit a lot, and I was like, I can't handle this anymore. Like, I just want some, I need to talk to somebody. And I said to her, I was like, I yell a lot, I do this, whatever. And I saw her for a while, and she was like, I feel like you think every time you yell, you're doing irreparable damage to your children. And I was like, well, aren't I? Like,
yeah,
what do you mean?
That's what
I was like, I am. Don't you read the blogs? That's what they say.
Oh my God.
Follow the gentle parenting pages for a while. You'll feel like such a huge failure.
Oh my God, I know.
And she was like, are your children okay? And I was like, I don't know, I guess. And she was like, Abby, this is what we do. We mess up, we apologize, and we move on and try to do better next time. This is parenthood. Like, this is what we do. And I was like, that's all I needed. I was like, almost like, okay, we could terminate now because that's all I needed. And like, we think about if you're losing your shit, think about all the times leading up to that you didn't. Because you were probably tested and passed like 100 times that day. You finally lost it, and like, okay, that's what happens. And then this is my big thing. This is, if you're going to hear any part of this, hear this now. After you lose it, and after you've calmed down, and after you've gotten yourself together again, you go to your child, you kneel down, if they're small. If you're like Diane, then you get on a chair and look at them in the face.
I know, right?
And you say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I scared you. I'm sorry that I did that. I'm sorry that I yelled. I'm sorry I took it out on you. I love you. I'll try to do better next time. And you know what? That is a relationship. That's what we do. These are relationships. And this is like, I'm not saying go lose your shit on purpose so you can like teach your child about relationships, but just show yourself as a human being to your child. And you're teaching them that relationships have struggles, relationships have healing times, and relationships go on. You're still a family. You still love your children still love you. And they'll learn that these are, we have big feelings. And
right.
Things happen, and then we apologize, and we get past it, and we move through it, and we're stronger.
You're still teaching them, like, then they're seeing and they're growing up with that idea that it's okay to screw up, and it's okay to have those feelings, and then you can, like, the apology thing, that's a hard thing. That's a really hard thing, and they're learning at a young age that it's okay.
Right, and right, exactly. And they're learning that, this doesn't mean that mommy doesn't love me anymore. It doesn't mean that, our relationship is over. That's not how it goes. These are the ups and downs of being in a family. Right. And, so that's what you're doing. And, so if you want to talk about though, so how do we keep ourselves safe? If you do think that you're going to hit your child, or you do think that there's something dangerous is going to happen, I have my friend, I have this lovely example of an old friend of mine. She had a new baby. The baby was crying, and she was just going to lose her mind. She was going to shake the baby or hit the baby or something. And she called her mom, and she was like, Mom, and, she's shaking and screaming into the phone. And her mom said, go put the baby down in the crib. Go put him down in the crib and walk out of the room.
Yeah.
Put him in the crib, shut the door, and leave. Not the house. Leave the room.
Leave the room. Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my God, my baby's in there crying by himself. It's okay. It's okay. You put your baby down, move her somewhere where you can be, you can get through this. This is not cry it out. This is not, abandoning your child, neglecting your child. This is keeping everyone safe.
Right. Correct.
And that is the perfect thing to do.
We should have a word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Fairhaven Health. Are you suffering from sore or cracked nipples? You are not alone, and help is on the way. Milky's Nipple Nurture Balm is organic and lanolin-free, made with natural ingredients to heal, protect, and moisturize. It is safe for mom and baby, and there is no need to wipe it off before breastfeeding. Head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for the link and use promo code BADASS for 10% off of everything at Fairhaven Health.
I don't think anybody should feel ashamed to have to do that.
No, not at all. You should feel proud that you did that. You should be proud of yourself when you keep when you get through a situation like that.
I mean, how many times, I can't tell you how many times I'd have to, like, even just once you put your kids to bed for the night and you just walk out of the room and you're just like, my God, I made it through the day. Like, it was really touch and go there for a while.
I know. And why is it that parents can never do that? Like, why can we never have a moment where we just feel really proud of, like, getting through a rough time, or really proud that we handled something well? It's like there's nothing. It's like all we're feeling is just like anger and shame and guilt and frustration and overwhelm. It's like and like that's totally normal. All that stuff is totally normal to feel. But there's really never anything out there that's saying like, oh, did you get through like a really bad time? Like, be proud. And it's okay to feel proud of yourself that you got through that.
Yeah, this is hard stuff. It really is. And what happened with the blog? Like, you said that you did that post and everybody was kind of coming through with positives and negatives and stuff like that. Like, yeah. Was there any other piece to that? Like, was it just the one post that you did on it?
Well, no, then I started talking about it a lot. And I still try to talk about that on my blog, because I feel like that's, again, it's like a missing piece. And that's what people always say, is that these are the things that are not being talked about. Mm-hmm. And it's not pretty, and a lot of people don't like it and they don't want to hear it. But, that's the real life. That's what we're all going through. That's what we're actually all going through.
Yeah. That you're not seeing. That's what you're...
that you're not seeing, that we're not talking about, because we're just... It's this idea that we're not allowed to talk about it.
And it's a very, very... It's a huge transition, and so many people are doing... That's the thing. It's like the biggest secret. Because how many babies are born? Like a zillion a year, right? At least. And like, how many parents are feeling like this, and how many mothers feel shameful that they are struggling because they're trying to get through the day and it's a battle, and nobody's talking about it. Like, nobody is talking about this. And
nobody's talking about it. I know. And I saw this. There was this really awesome, I don't know if you saw this on Facebook. It was like a post that went viral. It was a picture of a woman at the grocery store with like all her kids. And she was at the grocery store, and she's trying to, whatever, it's chaos. You know how it is to go to the grocery store with like a bunch of kids.
Oh my God, yeah.
And she got to the checkout line, and she's freaking out, whatever. And this older woman walks up to her and she says, like, do you have a phone? Do you have a phone with a camera on it? And she's just like, oh my God, like, now you're really going to bother me now? And the woman is like, I want to take a picture of you. Like, like you being, like, look at you. You're amazing. And you're getting through your day. And I want to take a picture of you so you can remember, like, how hard you work.
Yeah.
And, like, it was so, you never get to see, you never have that perspective, because, it's like you're out at, the store or whatever, and there's like, again, we were talking about before, like, there's the moms yelling at her kids, and I was like, oh my God, I would never do that. I would never talk to my kids like that
in public,
and then you have a kid, and there you are. Yeah. Then we're all on the same team, right? And yeah, it was nice for that, finally a person to be like, you're working really hard. Not like, oh, you're so bad, you're yelling at your kids. It's like, you're working so hard right now.
Yeah. It is not simple.
No. And I had the idea, I don't know what it was. I can't even think of when the last time was, because I just like lost my shit today. So I don't remember like if it was yesterday time or the day before or whatever. But I lost it like really bad. Like, I was like screaming, and like, My husband was there. I couldn't have done this if he wasn't there, but so he was there and I was just yelling and I opened the front door and I ran out the door. I just opened the door and I ran out and I sprinted as fast as I could around the block. And I got halfway around the block and I was like, oh no, I have asthma. I don't have my inhaler. And I was like, oh no. Now I just have like a really have to keep running now. It's really, now I got to go home real fast. And I just, you know, I don't know. It was just how I did it in the moment. Instead of continuing to stand there and scream, and I was so frustrated. Mm-hmm. That I needed to do something like physical with my body. Yeah. And so that's just like what I did. And people, you know, people might be listening to this and be like, you're so nuts. Like you need to see a therapist. And again, whatever. Sure. Fine. Yeah. But you know, that's just it. That's what happened to me. I mean, I lose it all the time.
I know. I do too. It's a very difficult place. Like I said, it's like, you know, I did the thing when they were younger and I completely relate to every single thing. Cause I mean, and I had 3 kids in 2 years. Like it was not a pretty sight for a long time. And it still is not for the most part. But like I said, they're older, so I can talk to them a little bit differently, but the challenges are still there for sure. But every minute, it doesn't matter how old they are, every minute you're afraid you're going to screw them up. Every minute you're afraid that something that you say or do is going to be, and then you've got those other things on social media saying, oh, your child's watching you. So now you're creeped out along the fact of, you know, you're totally afraid.
Or like when you yell, you cause...
Yes. Cause damage. They're
you
watching
cause brain damage when you yell. It's like, oh my God, come on. And I was like, it was wonderful when I had this, like a friend who just, as a child, I guess is your same age because she just went to college. And she was like, yeah, I was bringing her to college and I'm like watching her, you know, go off. And I was just thinking like, what, she says, what was I so stressed out about? You know, like, what was I freaking out about this whole time? You know, they're going to just grow. They grow up. They're going to grow up. They're going to be okay. Not every single tiny little thing, oh my God, is going to affect their entire life. I mean, yes, parents are important and we are the ones who are molding them for their future, but you're present and you're there and you're raising them and you're loving them. That's what you're doing. That's going to happen. They're going to grow up and they're going to be okay. The way that you screw up along the way is not going to ruin all of that.
Right. It's a learning process for everybody.
Yeah.
It really is. And one of the things that helped me a lot, and I know, of course, not everybody has this benefit, and I hope other people do not have it, but, you know, my husband has older kids. So there have been plenty of times where I would be freaking out over something that my child was doing when they were littler. And, you know, we first got together, my kids were like 5 years old and his kids were adults. And he was like, they're fine. They're fine. Like nothing, they're fine. And I'd be like, oh, all right. You know, there was one time I remember we were it was before we even moved into his house. And Brandon was probably 5. And he threw a golf ball up into the air and turned his head up to look at it, and it bonked him right in the forehead. Like, just like a cartoon, you know, like just came right down on his forehead. And I was like, oh! And Tom looks at me, he goes, are you kidding me right now? And I'm like, he's hurt. He's like, he's fine. And I'm like, but it hurts me. Whenever they're physically hurt, I have physical pain in my body. He's like, are you serious right now? Like, but he has seen his kids run through a glass door. Like, you know, like I'm not even kidding. Like one of his kids legitimately ran through a glass door because he thought it was open. When he was little. And my kids have nothing like that has ever happened with my kids. And he looks at my kid dropping a golf ball in his head and he's like, he is fine. What is wrong with you? You know, but it's like sometimes you need a different perspective.
Yeah, right.
To just go, okay. And I see his kids as successful adults because they are in a lot of ways successful adults. And I'm like, Oh, all right. So I guess they really won't fall into the pool if they're like standing on the deck too close, and they'll be okay.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
it is so hard to put a whole thing into perspective and think about what is going to happen 10 years from now. You know, like how is what I'm doing to my child right now going to affect them in 10 years? Like that is way too much to think about. It is way too much. And we just...
Yeah, and you can't, and there's just no way, I mean...
No.
There's really no way to predict this. And certainly you losing your shit and then, oh, I'm sorry, and like moving and having a normal relationship with your child is not what is going to screw things up.
No. Mm-mm. I mean,
you not being there, you not caring, you not, giving them attention and love, that screws people up.
yeah. And why is it
And
that
that's
we...
not what you're doing.
No. And we only talk about, oh my gosh, they see the bad things and they imitate it. How about all the good stuff? If you really think about the bad
Right.
days, like there's way more good than there is bad days. And I know it feels like there's not a lot of times, but there really is. Your kids laugh way more than they cry. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's...
Right. The bad times really drag on.
Yeah.
And they just feel like so long and so long. But we move through them, and we move through all kinds of emotions and times. And, we talk about like the highs and the lows, but there's like a million levels in between those. And we're moving through them all the time.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly normal. And if anyone here is thinking that what they're going through is not normal, then by all means, talk to somebody about it. That's never, ever going to be a bad thing.
Mm-mm.
But if you're just, if you're questioning, oh, I'm losing my shit and this isn't normal. No, it's normal.
It absolutely is. And that is your lesson for today, folks. You can lose your shit and be okay with it. Really, you can be okay with it.
You can be okay with it. Yeah.
It's fine. Tomorrow's
You
a new
lost your
day.
shit, everything's okay.
It's totally fine. Totally fine.
Yeah.
We are here to tell the tale because we've lived it. Yes. But yeah.
So thank you for listening.
Yeah. And, it's feel confident in your parenting. It's totally fine.
Yeah. And feel free to share your experience in the review section on iTunes if you would like. And also the comments section on badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com is live.
Come on, you want to comment on how you lost your shit.
Head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com for sponsor links, other episodes, and to talk.
Yes, and we will absolutely be looking at that. So don't feel like we're going to, put a comment, and we just never see it again.
Yeah, no, we'll see everything. Yeah, that's our home.
Yeah, so definitely do it and spread the word. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.